Thank you for joining us for tonight's Silicon Valley Engineering Leadership Community. I am Kimberly Weefling, and I'm delighted to be here tonight at our Leadership Academy. Tonight's guest is Belle Walker. Belle has been a speaker at our evening event recently, and today she will share more details in a more interactive way, the incredible wisdom that she gave us a peek into when she spoke here. Belle is a wonderful engineering mind and a systems thinker. I've had the pleasure of co-facilitating with her at a number of workshops recently for global clients. She is at the same time technically brilliant and has incredible human skills with a keen understanding of process. So the process, the people, and the product technology, that's a combination I don't frequently find in my technical colleagues. Please give a warm welcome to Belle Walker.
Thank you, Kimberly. That was an incredible introduction. I really appreciate that. I'm going to share my screen with some slides, but don't worry, I only have a few slides, and I am expecting the majority of our time this evening to be spent in breakout rooms or debriefing and discussing what we learned in those breakout rooms. So, starting with the PowerPoint, I'm going to build a little bit on what Kimberly said to introduce myself. And I do want to make a note for those of you who joined my previous SVELC talk. There will be some overlap, but I see quite a few new faces, so I'm going to make sure that we all have a solid foundation by the time we get to the activities. So starting with me, I have 2 engineering degrees. I have a mechanical engineering undergraduate degree and a systems engineering graduate degree. I also come from a long line of engineers. So I like to say that I am what happens when an incredibly people-oriented person pops up in an incredibly engineering-oriented family. I particularly love this picture because I graduated from USC with my systems engineering master's degree within a week of my brother graduating from Harvey Mudd, which is in the same general area, with his own engineering degree. I decided to keep the engineering theme going in my own family and married an aerospace engineer. We have 2 adorable cats who may decide to join us later this evening. And I began my career working at Google. So even though I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, my first job was actually to build an aerial photography operation. And so there it became clear to me very quickly that in building a structure of people, there was quite a bit of overlap with what I had learned about building structures that are mechanical. And so something some of you may have heard me say before is that I don't know any mechanical or civil engineers who would design a bridge, pull up some blueprints, hand them over and say, here's a bridge. As long as you make it out of steel, you'll be fine. Steel is meaningless in that context. There are so many different variations and types and treatments and finishes. And yet, we constantly design organizational structures and say, if you make it out of people, you'll be fine. People are at least as varied as types of steel. And so I have basically built my career around the knowledge and observation that you can take these engineering concepts and apply them in people-oriented contexts. And not only do you have to recognize the individuality and uniqueness of people, it only works if you do that. And so we'll be talking a lot more about that later on this evening. Last but far from least for this intro, I spent quite a while at Here Technologies as an engineering director, where I had a chance to further refine and practice my leadership philosophy. And in the last year or so, I have decided to become a full-time consultant, bringing these observations and techniques to a wide variety of companies. So, we talked a little bit about this in the networking before the conversation, the meeting really started today. But the differences between leading, managing, and why I talk about managing like an engineer Management can be a bit of a dirty word, but it's still in many people's titles when they are asked to be team leaders specifically. And our modern companies ask a lot from these team leaders that we call managers. And so I want to be very clear that at the base, you have to be a leader. That's why we have this forum. That's why you're going to see this word all over the place and probably in all of the best conversations with people you respect and wish to follow. And a leader's role is primarily to motivate and inspire and to bring people with them. But when you're responsible for a team, there's a little more to it. You also have to enable that team. There was a great analogy that we were using earlier. Kimberly was talking about if you go into a restaurant, you may order from a menu, but you don't tell the chef how to cook the food. That would be a rather extreme degree of micromanagement. I was thinking in terms of the customer. If a customer walks into the restaurant and there's no menu and they suddenly have to pick what they want from every choice of food ever, even worse, pick what they want without actually knowing what's available in the kitchen, that can be a lot of pressure. Having that menu, having that basic structure enables them to make the decisions and find what they want within a framework. And many people are very similar in their work context. They need freedom. They want to have flexibility in how they execute, but a certain degree of structure can actually enable and empower them. And so training is often exclusively focused on leadership. And again, leadership is fundamental. The management won't be successful without it. But many new managers are so terrified of micromanaging that they refuse to manage at all. And then others end up micromanaging anyway because they don't know that there are really other options. Obviously, the teams that report to them suffer when managers choose either of those paths. But the good news is there's a better way. When you enable teams, they can achieve more as you motivate and inspire them. So those of you who saw this title and are familiar with the concept of scientific management may have said, manage like an engineer. That sounds familiar. Well, scientific management is basically based around this picture. It's the idea that people are like interchangeable cogs. And I particularly love this image because it is absurd on so many levels. Not only do people obviously not work this way, cogs don't work this way. Real cogs come in all different shapes and sizes, finishes and materials. And when you go to figure out how to put them together, you need to make sure that they will mesh and accomplish what you need, but you're not looking for the same cog over and over and over again. You may have seen clockworks or fancy watches with transparent faces. It's not that every cog in that watch is the same size. It's the combination of all the different sizes and pieces working together that make the machine work. So how would you go about choosing cogs? And so this is going to be our first interactive activity. And I'm hoping that some of you are familiar with the annotation function in Zoom. So next to the green bar that should be at the top of your screen or the top of your window, saying that you're viewing my screen, there should be view options and then an option to annotate. And if you click that, you should have a chance to, you should be able to select text and be able to write. And I would love for people to write some of the different, oh, I see a stamp, that's good. Yeah, I'd like people to write some of the things they might think about if they were to be choosing cogs for, let's say, making a new watch. So what might you look for? And I have to get my own annotation pane open. Yeah, the mass, that's a good one. Size, yeah. Diameter. I like the I'm not sure what Prec 2 means. Whoever wrote that wants to jump in. And for those of you who don't know, one of the joys of Zoom is that only the person who created the whiteboard or is sharing their screen can move things when they once they've been created. So I will unoverlap them as needed. Oh, pitch diameter, yeah. Tensile strength, magnetic properties. How many hands do we need to drive? Oh, this is there are a lot of great insights here. I'm gonna give it another minute or two, and then I'm going to save this. Oh, there might also be, no, okay. I'm not sure, I'm guessing you can't see, but I have the video right under my camera so that I can see some of your fabulous faces while I'm presenting and keep myself looking into the camera. Okay, I'm gonna save this for later. This is great feedback, thank you. So now I'm going to clear and we're gonna go, ooh, watch features, yeah. We're gonna go back to the slides for just a few minutes. So several of these were already brought up. Size, so you can have small cogs, you can have large cogs. Shape, and in this case, I was thinking about the tooth shapes in particular, making sure that they will align and mesh, and we'll pretend that I got my little PowerPoint drawings to line up perfectly. Material, if you don't have a strong enough material, you might find that a weak material loses the strength, or loses the teeth, and then you have gaps and things stop running. The weight, if it's too heavy, it could break the entire system apart. The appearance, sometimes being able to see at a glance which piece is which, color coding can be really helpful for that. So these are all things you might think about when choosing cogs. So now we're gonna go pretty much straight into breakout rooms. What we're going to do there is first a quick exercise. So you're gonna have 5 minutes in the breakout rooms. And you're going to be choosing materials for different applications. So I'm going to walk through the instructions, and I'm going to unshare my screen and give you all the link that you'll be following once you get into your breakout rooms. So here's the instructions. You'll see them. The link is going to take you to a set of Google Slides. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and we're just going to take a quick glance through and see if everybody got the same or ended up putting the same allocations. So we have aluminum, carbon fiber, steel. Not sure. Steel, aluminum, carbon fiber. Steel, aluminum, carbon fiber. Aluminum, steel, carbon fiber. Aluminum, steel, carbon fiber. Aluminum, carbon fiber, steel. Oh, and some specifications. I wonder how many people ended up looking at this.
Oh gosh.
So we're gonna take a few minutes and just debrief and discuss. And then I've got some slides to walk through what we'll debrief here, and then I'll introduce our next breakout activity. So thoughts so far?
Oh, you're so tricky. I never thought there would be like specifications on the last slide. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I think
We all stopped at our number.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that trick when it comes to taking tests. You should read all the questions before you do the test because you answer the easy ones first.
Oh, tunnel vision. Okay, thank you.
I was a bit curious if there would be a difference between slide 1 and breakout room 1 and breakout room 6, because breakout room 1 would have no reason to scroll down, but breakout room 6 would have to scroll down anyway.
Oh, we just had to hunt and find where's 6? Where's 6? Oh, 6 is on slide 9. Oh, drat! I can't move the plane at all. It's stuck. Oh, and you know, it's one of those things.
I don't want to say
Frankly,
the
I
word,
was just confused.
I don't want to say the word losers. Okay, but
Because I mean, you know, for one thing, I was by myself for the longest time, and then you see you see situation 2 car body, and then you see a picture of a car body that's made out of steel and says it must be lightweight. I'm like, what? I don't know what's going on here. I was getting so tripped up on that. It's like, what the?
if you stop your moaning and whining, we're going to get to the reason. Okay. Thank you, John. I love you.
Well, keep chatting for just one more second. I'm going through real quick to make sure we don't have that ordering issue for the next activity. So if there's any other immediate
We're
insight.
talking again. Just don't.
Did anyone else just put the car with the car and the bridge with the bridge and the plane with the plane?
I was tempted.
That was my first thought, and I kept coming back to it.
Yeah, it's I was kind of hoping, I'll be honest, I was really hoping that some people would take it, would go with that order. All right.
I had good group members that saved me.
Teamwork, collaboration, exactly. All right, so let's come back to my
Well,
PowerPoint.
I just did a quick guess. I put mine together.
All right, so debriefing our first activity. This is what you started with. And yes, it's really tempting to just say bridge, let's put the bridge with the bridge, airplane with the airplane, car with the car. But then you see the strong bending. Why on earth would I have included that? And I did actually make each of those requirements hyperlinks. They do link to the specifications, just in case that was my helpful hint in case it worked for anyone. So coming back, strong bending. All right, well, like I said, on that last slide, I provided some specifications. And I did order these a little bit intentionally in that I put strong bending on the left in the situations, and there is only one material that is strong in bending.
Oh, wait, before you go on, I quickly did this by myself, and I put steel, carbon, and aluminum. So.
All right. Okay, good. So that slide that we didn't have before now has steel, carbon, aluminum. All right, so steel. Then our next one said strong in compression. Well, we know it can't be steel because we've already used that. And our aluminum is what's left that's strong in compression. And that leaves us with only our carbon fiber as an option, and it is indeed light. So this is a incredibly oversimplified, but pseudo-realistic engineering exercise. You have to choose the right materials for your application based on some requirements. Of course, things get a little messier when there's people. So we're going to try a slightly longer breakout room activity where we're going to assign some tasks. So again, I will post the link in the chat window, and I'm going to shuffle the breakout rooms a little bit just for fun. And the instructions this time will be to go to the slide with your breakout room number at the top, and then you'll move the blocks representing tasks into the box for each team using all available information. So I dropped into a few rooms. I heard some absolutely fabulous conversation, and you all definitely thought of some things I did not, which is perfect. So what I'm going to do is similar to what I did last time. I'm going to share my screen so everyone can see what the different rooms look like. Then I'm going to run through my slides and the things I had thought about, and then I'm going to bring it back to unshare my screen so we can gallery view and share all the things you thought about that I did not. So starting with our slides, we've got pretty much the things that were on the left and things that were on the right, pretty close allocated. Similar, except we've got our change orders in one team and our tech debt the other team. Similar. Interesting. This one has 2 large boxes on one side. Another one with 2 large boxes on one side, and our survey results that were at the end. So I'm going to share my slides so that you are directly, so you're not all looking at your own videos. Only I get to see those. All right, so my thought process and this should have been, ignore the part where it says breakout activity 1, we're debriefing breakout activity 2. My thought process was that the trick version was that if nobody looked at any other materials, you could pretty easily just select all of the things on the left and move them to one team lead, all of the things on the right, move them to another team lead. There's nothing immediately wrong with that, and there could be some reasoning or logic that led to that decision. I'll be curious to hear. I did throw in some resumes, and the catch on the resumes for anyone who read closely is that the actual experience is effectively identical. I just changed the company names and moved some words around, spelled out senior, short senior. So this actually is not very helpful, but you might have said, well, I've got a bunch of video experience on one side and a bunch of music experience on the other. So I'll take my lump of music things and put them with Sawyer, and my lump of video things with Alex. I also included down at the bottom these survey results, and this is a little small on this slide. So here's a big blown up view. And what these survey results tell us is that Alex is significantly more comfortable with breadth of tasks and with context shifting and with changing requirements than Sawyer is. And so for my made up people, the way that that manifests would be to put 2 tasks with Alex so that there's less context shifting, and more tasks with Sawyer, who's, oh, that is the exact opposite. Reverse those. We would give our 2 tasks to Sawyer, who's not comfortable with our context shifting, and our plethora of tasks to Alex, who is comfortable with context shifting. Now, the blaring caveat here is that in the real world, I would expect Alex and Sawyer to be part of this conversation. The main thing I wanted to inject into the conversation was the notion that we have these survey results and there is something around the preferences of each of these team leads that could be taken into consideration. And I heard some great conversation around that. So with that context of what I was thinking, I'm really excited to hear from all of you how you interpreted.
I think we took that changing requirements very seriously and that flexibility. And I think where we felt, Alex prefers, he's okay with changing requirements. And if you're building an application completely and you will have change of requirements, and we thought that's probably a better fit for Alex.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm trying to remember if yours was the room that I dropped into that I think was having that conversation, right? That's why I was trying to be careful about how I described the implications of each, because I heard someone, it might have been Matt, say very explicitly that if this person is less comfortable with change, you don't want to give them, or with context shifting and multiple tasks, you don't want to give them a whole application, because then they're going to have to frequently change what they're doing. And that's part of what I think is so interesting about these insights and conversations, and why you would really, really want those people in the room so you could ask them what feels like less change to you. I'd love to hear from Breakout Room 1.
I think we went the linear path. It was like we forgot the last slide again because we were moving too many pieces. When we did it before, it was more in a spreadsheet, and we were able to figure it out a little more easily. So we played the 5th. We took the linear path.
No problem. And I was being a little tricky. I split the resumes and put them at the top so that you might think, oh, well, last time she tricked us by hiding the specifications, so she didn't bother this time. She left the resumes right at the top. But now I also added information at the bottom again.
No, we should have. That was a lesson. Look for all the information.
We fell for all of the little, or I fell for all of the little things, and then like read through everything again, and then we slowly caught each one, and like every single one that we caught flipped our position. Like we did the Alex worked at all the video companies, let's put all the video stuff, and then we did the Alex likes the, I'm sure I'm mixing the names up, but one guy likes to switch a lot, so let's give him all the many assortment of tasks as opposed to just the 2. And then we saw like the thing that Matt was talking about with how, well, if you actually look at what each task is, then it should be flipped again. And it was fun to keep moving them back and forth and realizing the next thing.
Yeah, so we also, we had a little bit of
Yeah, I think that that survey, depending on how you read the question of depth, and depending on what angle you want to look at it, you can take a lot of translations out of that. And so, just speaking for me personally, because we didn't really discuss it very well in our breakout, but I'm not sure it would have shifted things without having that element of them being involved to clarify. Because, for example, one of the things that we did, the reason we broke it up so evenly on the technical debt versus change management side of things was that their skill sets, both of them were primary and technical and secondary on project management. And so there was this element of, well, wait a minute, if you overload the project management task for one of them so that they're only working in their secondary skill set, are they going to feel like they're not fully contributing because they're not leveraging the things that they're best at? Whereas the other one is knocking it out of the park because they're using their primary skill set on everything. By the same token, they're going to wind up bored. So, and that last question, of course, relates to the very reason for your survey. And so the recurring theme, I guess the nutshell is that item of those people needing to be involved just becomes, italicize it, bold it, underline it, capitalize, and then you might almost have its level of importance.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, that the interpretation of these terms is wide open, and it comes right back to what I said at the beginning about steel being somewhat meaningless, right? I used other terms that can be interpreted in many ways, and whether it's an engineering problem or a leadership challenge, making sure that everyone is using words the same way and on the same wavelength about the conversation that you're having is crucial. So it's a bonus lesson. Anyone else want to share thoughts?
I'll just throw in a point. When you talk depth versus breadth, I have encountered engineers in the past, and for them, they want to own all of a product. So for them, lack of breadth mean I want everything on the video. I want the app, I want the analytics, I want the requirements management, the change orders. That video thing is mine. So for them, that's what lack of breadth means.
Yeah.
It's a different spin than what you mentioned a bit earlier.
Yeah. Awesome. So we have, I believe, 10 minutes left in this section. So what I'm going to do is jump through real quick my key takeaways as I had them, and then come back here again for final thoughts, questions, and key takeaways from your side. So the key takeaways that I wanted to reiterate are to remind, first and foremost, that leadership is fundamental. I think of this often as a sort of wedding cake where leadership is the base layer and the management and enabling goes on top of it. But the goal of these two exercises is to show that engineering principles can be used to enable rather than micromanage teams. Right? The kinds of conversations that we were having, even in the context of potentially assigning work, were very much in the spirit of understanding the needs and desires of individual people, very similar to how we pick materials for more mechanical applications. The caveat is there are right answers. When it's engineering, there may not be purely right answers for people, but you can have really great conversations and learn a lot. So taking the unique characteristics of team members into consideration, just as important when you're talking about mechanical properties. So back to gallery view for key takeaways from everyone else. And if you want to toss any key takeaways into the chat box as well, feel free if you're not in the mood to unmute.
I always break the silence. Read the directions. Read all of the directions.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this case, pretty appropriate, I think.
Yeah, the directions did not explicitly say, look at all the slides, but they did implicitly say using all available information.
Exactly. No, just look for all the resources. Turn over every rock. I got it. I just don't always remember.
I just want to say that if you can involve people in the decisions, you will dramatically increase their commitment to making it work. I can't imagine having this decision made without involving these people and saying, hey, what do you guys like? Because maybe someone is like, I am sick to death of this. I want to switch to something new, or I'm having some challenges in my life. You know, I mean, if we don't involve people in the conversations, we shouldn't expect commitment to the decision.
Yeah, I think that that's really important, and it's a really valuable point. One of the things that I've seen, and this is, Kimberly, I think a great point to build on top of that, is one thing that I think can be helpful is thinking about some of this before you go into the conversation can also help make sure that you're looking at the full big picture. Because if, you know, some of you may have seen in the breakout rooms, if you didn't have that survey handy, it might have been tempting to think in terms of, well, we're going to keep one big box on either side. Who gets which big box, right? The option of putting two boxes on one side might not have even occurred to you. And so I think that's part of the, making sure that you're considering all the variations. And yes, absolutely, then getting the input of the people before making the decisions.
I think involving people definitely helps commitment, but as like a leader, I think there's also another challenge from that specific example. If you choose only one team to ever work on tech debt, you're building a culture where one team is always cleaning up after the other teams, and that can, like, you know, lead to like a sense of resentment toward other teams. So I think there's a careful balance there.
And
Maxim,
along the duration of the project, things can change as well, right? So that survey result also, if we keep having survey every quarter in a 2-year project, the employee surveys can change, right? And they may need to work on different things. They may want to work on different things after, let's say, 1 year or so. So that also, I think, is.
I think I have a question actually about.
Yeah, go for it.
So surveys are, I think it's an excellent idea, but is there any kind of survey that's actually really useful in practice that you'd use? For example, I was looking at Myers-Briggs as to understand personality traits and all that. Is that actually, does it have a good scientific basis, and are those surveys stable? Like what the previous guy was saying about, you know, changing feelings and whatever, but there's got to be some stable personality traits. I think people's personalities are set at like 5 or something.
Yeah, so in this one, I'm going to give a short answer, and then I'm going to defer to Kimberly, Susan, and anyone else who has actual expertise on the data here. My experience has been that there is huge value in any of those surveys for creating a shared vocabulary, because even if what you're doing is saying, I disagree with everything this survey said about me, you're able to articulate it in a context that's shared with others. My understanding is that some are more some surveys of these assessments are designed to evolve with people over time. Some are supposed to be more core dependent, but yeah, Susan, if you want to add to that.
I think you said it very well, and I would also say that they are observations, and everybody is different. And just like Myers-Briggs, I think you've got 16 different possibilities, but that doesn't mean that we all fit into 16 boxes. So I like to take it as a suggestion. Kimberly?
And I would just add that these are tools. If you only have a hammer, you're really good with nails. But if you're Myers-Briggs ENFP like I am, if I really need to focus on ISTJ ways of behaving, I can do it for short periods of time, but don't ask me to do it all the time because I have to really concentrate. So I like the Enneagram because Enneagram is like, hey, these are strategies for getting things done. And I can use this one strategy really well. And these other 3 I'm okay at, and these other 4 I suck at. So I think we need to understand that we can adapt, but we have to really focus and concentrate to do things. It's like if you sign your name with your normal dominant hand, it's easy. Switch the pen to the other hand. Try it right now. Pick up a pen with the other hand and sign your name and see how much you have to really focus to sign it and see how crappy the result is. That's what happens when we try to perform outside of our normal preferred strategies.
I'm left-handed, so both my hands write terribly.
And just to expand on Kimberly's concept of tools, there are different assessments that you're going to use for different purposes. And so, you know, I have my own tools that I like to use for different times. So I think using Kimberly's analogy that it is all tools and you should use the right tool for the job you need to do at hand.
And there are some great experts in this room. So during the, if you have time to stick around during the networking, we can also talk a little bit about some of the, you know, the DISC versus Enneagram versus, you know, strengths and weaknesses of each, which I think will be very interesting. Any other? Oh.
I was going to say, yeah, I've never heard of Enneagram, so that's cool.
That's a good one. Yeah,
Yeah,
John.
they did it at the Stanford Engineering Management School, and I really like it because it's based on your beliefs, and you can examine those beliefs, and you can change those beliefs, and then you can be more adaptable.
Should we give a plug for Matthew's book? We have a dear friend, Matthew Schlegel, who just wrote a book, Teamwork 9.0. You can get it on Amazon. I think it's like 20 some, you know, it ranges depending on the week from $19.95 to $23.95, but it's very affordable. He really gives it a great perspective. And for engineers, he spends a lot of time looking at project teams and how project teams work together. So it's called Teamwork 9.0.
I don't know about Enneagrams, but I know I myself hate some of these tests because I don't like being put in a box.
Yeah, and that's why I came back to my favorite part is the shared vocabulary. Because really what I found is that if you have a team of people who have never done any of those assessments, talking about styles and personalities and ways of working can be very difficult because everyone is using their own kind of vocabulary. And so I often, you know, encourage people to use something and, you know, consult an expert about the exact right something, but honestly, a something is often better than a nothing, just to allow that.
Yeah, I would really point out to somebody that, you know, between the group here, I think you've got at least 3 different kinds of these tests that you have certified instructors on DISC for me. And what I've sort of discovered on these over the years too is do not, these are all in the same space in the sense that they are describing behaviors or the way you receive information, the way you put off information, the way that you logic through things. They're within that bubble, but each of them really brings their own thing to the party. So I would not, or I would encourage you to not get locked into that X is the best, you know, personality profiling thing ever. Now, I'll be honest, I would probably put Briggs-Myers last, mostly because it is so granular.
It's horoscope.
That, you know, they're trying to, oh, geez, is this, that, or is that the other thing or whatever, is really, really challenging. But regardless of whether you're using Enneagram or DISC or the 4 lenses, or, you know, there's several of them, and you go through, and if you look at all of them, you'll start to figure out that each of them really has their own horn to toot. You know, that's a worthwhile horn to listen to if you're interested in that kind of music. So, you know, just don't judge them too strongly. You know, take them all in, and like Belle said, the shared vocabulary, if you can at least get to know 1 or 2 of them, can be really, really valuable.
Yeah, and so I'm going to use that as a perfect lead into my wrap up, which is that for, you know, materials for steel, aluminum, etc., we can know very precisely what the characteristics, the strengths, the weaknesses are. For humans, we cannot, but we can ask, we can talk about, and we can do our best to think about people's strengths and weaknesses and preferences and development goals as requirements to keep them satisfied and engaged. And at the very least, it will likely provide a much higher level of satisfaction and engagement than if you just went in and said, even, split, go, done. So Remember, we are leaders who are enabling our teams, and we do that by supporting them in the ways that are best for them. Thank you very much for joining this session. I hope everyone had a fabulous time and learned something.